Hello there, Ray here, and today guys I'm going to show you these honey block mega sweepers. These mega sweepers can destroy a large part of the ocean just with a single sweep. And they use the new honey block mechanic, which is the honey blocks won't connect to the slime blocks. So each slice is pushed individually, and it's designed so when it hits something, part of the pieces can be left behind while the rest can continue to move forward. So if we're going to run into this island up ahead, you can see down here when it hit some pieces of the ground which were too low, it just left those slices behind and it continued moving forward with whatever it had left. Now the whole machine seems a little glitchy just because the way pistons are in this version, they're kind of laggy. But here you can see it's coming up onto this island over here, and it's probably going to hit at least a piece of it maybe. Oh, nope, looks like it's going to completely clear it, but you can see how everything continues moving forward just fine, even though it left those pieces behind. And you can change the speed of the sweeper to whatever speed you want. You can even make it only move forward when you want it to. I currently have this one on a slow clock, so it's moving forward kind of slowly. And sometimes when it looks like blocks are left behind, those are just ghost blocks, meaning that the blocks don't really exist there. It looks really cool when the whole machine just squishes all the water and there's nothing left. So here you can kind of see the machine working when there is no water. Looks really pretty with the slime stone as well as the new honey block side by side. And you can stop it from flying as well just by putting in a redstone block here on the clock. We built up a couple of different designs during our snapshot streams every Wednesday as well as Friday. This is the time where we open up the server so that you guys can join and we can mess around with building cool stuff like this. So make sure you guys turn on your notifications here on YouTube as well as follow me on Twitter and our ProtoTech community Discord. Because sometimes we start earlier so the Europeans can join and we give notifications of when that occurs. Now the three different designs look very similar, but the main difference is kind of the way they're being pushed as well as some of the engines. This design here was our kind of first idea of how it should work. Essentially, each of these honey columns or the slime columns are side by side, and they are as long as a piston can push. Any longer, and the piston would not be able to push it. Then we alternate between honey and slime blocks since they don't stick to each other, but the slime will stick to itself, and the honey block will stick to itself as well. And both of them will also stick to other blocks, so both of them are connected to their individual redstone blocks, which are up above. Then right behind them we have a row of pistons which are being moved in by honey blocks as well as rows of slime blocks which are alternating. This is also to avoid the 12 block push limit which each piston has. And then we kind of use a triangle effect as the outside is bigger and we slowly move inwards. So the ones pushing this column here are these pistons and they're attached by this bar of slime as well as honey blocks. And then these two bars are being pushed by this, and hooked onto this is an engine. This is actually an updating engine, so we can update it. Now you can update this piston with anything when you're in survival, but since I'm here in creative showing you guys this, I can just use a fire charge. If I light this piston here, it's going to push this slime block as well as this redstone block over here, stick onto this piston, and then at that point it's going to lose power and pull the segment towards itself. Then this piston will be very close to this redstone block and will decide to push, and he's going to push everything forward one. So this piston and everything in front of it get pushed, and then this row will get pushed forward, and then this row will get pushed forward, and this will eventually push our entire wall. So if we go ahead and just update this piston, you can watch the whole wall move forward one block. So this is a manual engine, meaning that you have to manually update it each time, which is nice in some circumstances where you don't want your flying machine to take off and get away from you. Now everything happens pretty fast, so it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of tell that this moves first, then this, then that, and then the very last is that wall there. And the wall actually moves in segments as well, so this large piece right here will move, and then once that moves forward, it will then push the next wall. Now the way that this is done is that we have observers which are staggered in the back, and after they are moved, they will send a pulse off into this block right here, which will update this piston and also update the pistons on either side using quasi-connectivity. Now Dr. Sploosh had a really cool idea of extending these sweepers downwards with more sections, and that way we can push even more water with it. And he's actually one of the founders of the ProtoTech SMP server. So when it does move forward, it's going to activate all these pistons which are going to push these segments forward, which this little mini wall here is pretty much exactly like the top one, except we don't have that line of redstone blocks on it. And that's going to move forward, and you can extend this as long as you want. We just went with 3 segments here. And this last segment, we went ahead and just illustrated that you can do a solid column of honey blocks or slime blocks, 12 blocks tall, and it can be pushed just fine with no problems. So let's go ahead and run this a couple times, kind of watch it working. When it moves slowly like this, it doesn't look as laggy when you have the entire thing moving super fast or through water. Now in the past, you could make large water sweepers like this with just slime blocks, but it's very complicated. You'd have to also stick in like stone blocks in between them, and the different segments were very small. And some of them were just really complicated, like some of the ones that ping you, and I designed where there was like pistons pulsing to destroy liquid blocks on all sides of them. So one of the main advantages of having the honey block is that it's very clean and you can kind of understand it quite easily once you understand like the basics of slimestone. Now I've heard people say that we should call it something other than slimestone since it no longer just consists of mostly slime blocks, it also consists of honey blocks. One of the ProtoTech members, El Gamer, suggested calling them sticky stone, which does make sense since they are both kind of a sticky form. Which does make sense because honey as well as slime are both sticky types of blocks. When you walk on top of them, the stickiness kind of slows down your walking. So I think that's a really good name to call it sticky stone. It kind of rings off your tongue as well when you say it. But it's more likely that the name slimestone will not go away. Very similar to redstone, a lot of things which are not even made up of redstone. So let's say you have a wooden pressure plate plus a wooden door. Neither of these have redstone in them, but most people, when you would show them something like this, would consider this to be redstone. And actually, a lot of stuff on my channel hardly uses any redstone. It's mostly a lot of other game mechanics and tricks put together to make something cool. Yet people still consider it redstone. Like my infinitely automatic core flower farm actually has zero redstone whatsoever. Yet it is a very majestic machine in the way it works. But if we were to call it something other than slimestone, I definitely feel like sticky stone is the appropriate name. I have seen you guys also suggest calling it glue stone, but that really doesn't make sense as neither slime nor honey are really used when making glue. Now you can make slime out of glue in real life, but it's pretty difficult to make glue out of slime. Now the next device over here is one that Pingu added in. With this segment here, we can easily push them all from a single side without having to kind of make this pyramid stepping. As the larger you want to make this, the larger this pyramid piece kind of gets. So if you want to go with something wider than this, you would probably want to go with this machine here that Pingu made, where everything's kind of ran off of this little bar right here. So this piece of segments will each move forward one at a time, and when they move forward, they'll also move these larger pieces forward. Now, in some cases, you can actually swap out slime block for honey blocks, and it'll work the same, but in some areas you cannot. So the main thing is to know that the honey block is smaller than a full cube, meaning that if you have an observer pointed into it, it won't transmit any power into it. So if this observer points into like a stone block, can conduct power, it's going to power this. But if it powers something like a chest, it's not going to put any power into this block, which you won't be able to use on the other side. So a scenario like this, it works just fine. We can go ahead and update this fly machine. You can kind of watch how it works. Notice how the pieces on the top kind of move one at a time. And as they move forward, they move the blocks in front of them. So let's watch that a couple more times. All moving forward, each pulling their segment, and then they're each individually pushing the pieces in front of them. So the whole wall doesn't move kind of all at once, but instead moves kind of in segments. So let's watch the wall. You kind of see the segments moving across. So the wall itself is exactly the same as the one we've seen before, but the top is different. So the main advantage of this is it allows you to extend this an infinite amount of distance and still be able to push it from a single location, which is right here. Now one thing you do have to be careful is you can't move this type of setup too fast, because what happens is because each of these kind of get pushed in large chunks, ones that are bordering between a honey block and a slime block can get updated twice. So this piston here can get updated when this segment moves forward and can also get updated when this segment moves forward. And because of that, when the segment tries to get moved forward a second time, it can leave this piston behind. So you can't use this with like your average flying machine. But you can easily add delay, as I showed you guys in the beginning. So this flying machine here is slightly different. We got a different type of engine on here, which is just one that you can add as much delay to it as you want. And delay is in these little segments here, which consists of an observer, a slime block, as well as a piston. Because it takes time for the pistons to extend or to push, this causes delay, and eventually you can make a clock using this with fly machine. Now the other difference with this fly machine is the large wall here. Instead of each of the walls being pushed, meaning that there is a gap between the piston as well as the block it's pushing each time, we have the walls being pulled. So right here there is a sticky piston, and when it moves forward it pulls it. This allows for a more thin profile. Notice how this profile is only 2 blocks and this profile here is 3 blocks, but as you add more sections onto it, the profile gets wider and wider very quickly. where this profile will stay very narrow. Now this is done very similar to the other ones where we have pistons. Instead we have sticky pistons, we face them backwards. You still got the observers, so every time this piece here moves, it will move this piston, and after it's moved, it'll be powered by this observer, and then it will reach out and grab these other segments and then pull them towards them. And then when you stop the machine, it'll even end up like this. Also, if you want, you can kind of save on blocks by putting in the very last row being some other cheap block that you have, like stone or cobblestone. This also allows you to fly the machine right against the ground, so if the ground's right here, the slime blocks won't try to drag the ground with it. And this is the type of machine that I showed you guys in the beginning of the video when we were sweeping out the water. So we can go ahead and start up this machine as well. We'll put an observer in here and then start it up. And you can kind of see how the clock here slows it down quite a bit, as it has to go through all these pistons in order to turn around and push it once again. You can see how the segments are kind of working together. Those segments move and these move, and eventually the entire wall moves forward. And like the very first design, the whole wall will move all at once. So you can see all these guys move and this one. And if you added more extensions onto them, they would be just delayed by one piston pulling. But it looks really clean relative to old sweeping fly machines, which were kind of cumbersome with tons of pieces. And I think people that even have a little grasp of understanding slimestone or sticky stone would be able to build this up easily in their world. And just like before, you can go ahead and stop it just by powering one of these pistons, so it can no longer extend. And some things to keep in mind with this design is that we have the stone blocks here. This is to allow so that power is sent to both these pistons. So if power is put into this block, which is powered this piston, and then it also powers this one through quasi-connectivity. Now if you had a block such as like honey block and you gave update to this piston, notice how only one piston updates. That's because honey block is not a full block. You can even notice this when you press up against it and then slide to the side. My guy is currently actually stuck on the edge between the honey block and this observer over here. Even though you can't see any difference in the size, there is a difference when it comes to pressing up against it. And this is what's used to determine if power can be sent through the block. So you have a stone block there, and that will power it, and that will make both pistons pulse. We did a similar thing here with this stone block and this observer pointing into it. So power is put into this block, which will update this piston, and these pistons will be updated using quasi-connectivity, this one over here as well, even as this one over here. So all those will fire each time it moves forward. Now you can use this to sweep any type of liquid, so lava as well as water. And over here is our little example spot where I'll show you guys the machine was sweeping through the water. And to actually pull this example world from the ProtoTech SMP server, so you can see some of the fly machines that we have on the server. Like this is the AFK bedrock breaking fly machine that we have for the survival world, breaking all that bedrock. We also have our perimeter maker up here, which is slowly destroying all the water as well as all the blocks in this entire area over here. It's going to end up making a 2,000 long block perimeter, and you can see one of our floor placing fly machines over here, which is placing in an image across this perimeter. You can kind of see the start of the word ProtoTech. So these machines are possible to be built up in survival. These three machines I just showed you guys right now are way more complicated than that water sweeper there, so you should have no problem building these up in your survival world. If you could just go over here, you can kind of see the setup which I used to build this up. So we got the machine and it's built in the water. So you build it directly inside the water. You can see all the pieces. This one has 3 layers worth of segments pushing the water. And you really shouldn't have to go any more than that because most oceans start at wide level 64 and they end at wide level 32. And we just built this up with the engine just above the water. Notice how everything is just slightly above it. And if you want, you can start building up here by using a lily pad, since lily pads can be placed on top of the surface of water, and then you can kind of start your build from here and continue outwards. Now the main thing to know when you are removing water is that it can kind of replace itself after the machine has moved. So if you typically run the fly machine after this whole segment has moved forward, the water would try to come in here and replace all the air gaps back in with water sources once again. And then you wouldn't really end up accomplishing anything as the machine just moved forward, but there was no air left behind. So the way that we make it so that there will be air left behind, like you seen earlier in the video, if we start the machine out with having some sugarcane, this is a nice little trick to kind of make a barrier to prevent water from going back through. As you can put sugarcane underneath the water as long as you have some sand blocks and some water blocks beside it, so you can just knock out holes and this will allow water to flow down beside the sugarcane and therefore you can plant it. Then you just want to have one sugarcane all the way up to the surface for each of the segments. So this segment here is being covered by this one, and this segment is being covered by this sugarcane, and this segment is being covered by this one over here. And what this does is kind of creates a barrier so that there isn't source blocks in a L shape. So if there are source blocks right here, and you would remove the source block where this block is at here, notice that there's going to be air there, but then quickly the water is going to fill in and replace it once again. So you want to kind of break that L-shaped formation or 3 water blocks in a row. Each of these are formations which will replace the center one. If water is on both sides, then it'll automatically replace the center, and same goes for like the L shape. If there's water in 2 places, it will replace the corners in with water sources. That's all we're pretty much doing here, but just on a larger scale. And it should be relatively easy to place in sugarcane like this, but you can use alternative blocks like leaf blocks or obsidian blocks or terracotta blocks, any block that won't stick to honey or slime blocks. Now we did this on both sides because we did start in the middle of the ocean, so water is all the way around it. So there's also 3 columns of your sugarcane over here as well. And now once you're ready, you can go ahead and start up this machine. So the machine is ready to go, and if I start pushing it, you can start seeing the leg as well as the water being left behind. If you look right here, you can kind of see the air gap. But yeah, the lag is pretty bad. My frames are currently about 5 frames per second, which it normally should be 60. And this is mostly just caused because of changes that they made at 1.14 as well as 15 to do with pistons pushing blocks. In some scenarios, it can be extremely laggy frame-wise. Server-wise, it seems to work just fine. But server-wise, when we were testing this on a multiplayer server, people really didn't have problems if they were in different parts of the world. And you can see even here on our internal server, which is labeled right up here, you can see we're running about 10 milliseconds per tick. Anything above 50 is bad. So you can see that we're staying well underneath of 50, meaning that all this lag we're seeing here is mostly just caused by the rendering of the objects moving. And of course there's ghost blocks like this, and if you move closer, you see the game will update them. Because there's just so much stuff being updated that the game doesn't show you stuff, so it looks like some of the world is kind of glitched out. But if you would get closer to it, the game would eventually decide to start showing you those pieces in more detail. You can also see there's a lot of Z fighting going on over here with the water. That is a bug that I think is known, and I believe they are trying to fix it. It's definitely the fly machine here, because if I move away from this fly machine, notice my frames will go up. Now they are getting pretty much up to 60 frames per second. And if I move closer to the fly machine, it's going to drop back down to 10 or so. So yeah, definitely the fly machine creating all the lag. And this is one of the reasons why servers don't want to update to versions like 1.14 or 1.13, definitely not like 1.15, just because the amount of lag that still hasn't been fixed in these versions really gives servers headaches, and especially people that are trying to run servers like server admins and stuff like that. And now that the fly machine is kind of out of the ocean over here and it's just in this void area, the frames did go up quite a bit. So part of it does have to do with the water, but there is some lag just coming from the pistons. But the entire machine looks very majestic as it flies through the world, and you can sweep out large chunks of water or even lava. Now if you're trying to sweep against the ground, eventually stick onto something like a tree or something, it wouldn't be able to continue to move forward. So you need to push something that is easy to break. So water, lava, even leaves would work. I really had a lot of fun designing these machines up with the fellow ProtoTech members as well as you guys, the viewers, during our snapshot streams. And we will be having one of these streams this Wednesday, so you have that to look forward to. If you would like to play around with these fly machines and go ahead and try and knock out a bunch of water with them, I will provide the world download to this world down below with all the machines ready to go and with signs telling you how to go ahead and start them. If you do enjoy learning about Minecraft, I have been playing the game for 10 years and I really appreciate if you go ahead and subscribe to learn more cool things that can be done in the game of Minecraft. And I would like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!